And it's important not only to end police brutality, but also to show our children that we can stand up.
It continues to go on every day, even when it's not caught on camera.
I can breathe.
I have never seen a man die on camera.
I can breathe.
Until I saw George Floyd.
We were always able to be more, but you had your knee on our neck.
Another night of violent and destructive protest.
That pressure cooker could not withstand any more pressure.
Just absolute lawlessness right now.
Why are you taking all of this?
There are thousands of protesters in the streets of Los Angeles who are rightfully angry. And then you have people like this who are instead acting lawlessly and are stealing.
What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing, because that's not gonna bring my brother back at all.
I was willing to risk my life, and every other protester had that same mindset.
They're putting this lady in handcuffs.
Injustice y'all did to us years ago.
Can we all get along?
You guys are doing to our young black men and our young black women.
I believe I witnessed a murder.
Which officer were you referring to?
The officer sitting over there.
Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do.
We witnessed history. We lived through history. We are going to tell these stories to our children and grandchildren.
We obviously need to be heard. Black lives matter. We understand that all lives matter, but they can't all matter until Black lives matter.
In LA, there's always huge news stories because we're such a huge area. You know, people think of LA, but you know, we cover Los Angeles County, Orange County, Riverside County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County. Each one of those locations on their own could have its own TV station. So there's always a lot going on.
2020 is that year we will never forget, starting out, of course, with the loss of Kobe Bryant.
Thank you.
January 26th, the Kobe Bryant helicopter crash.
So we are looking right now at live coverage of the scene. I'm going to have a tough time with this coverage because you're looking at this helicopter that has gone down with 5 people on board. And when the word came in, for me, it was Kobe Bryant might be on board.
I have to go talk to a team before a game and tell them to play a game.
It was just devastating. It was so sad, and the entire country mourning, and especially my hometown. And so it was difficult.
All right, you are looking live from Skyfox at LA Live. It's amazing, even in the last hour, Christine, how much that crowd has grown.
I think this city was shaken to its core by that, even the youngest of fans.
Kobe was everything, you know. He was my childhood, like.
All of that was huge, huge, devastating, emotional, gut-wrenching.
There was an energy in the city after that that was sort of uncertain. I think there was a lot of grief.
I'm declaring a public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of novel coronavirus.
So I'd been watching what was happening in Asia and then Europe, thinking, oh my gosh, we're Americans, land of the free. How are we going to react to lockdowns and stay at home and this crazy virus that we didn't know anything about?
Joe Biden was out in LA. I was covering his, it was right after, I believe, he started winning the nomination.
Just a few days ago, the press and the pundits had declared the campaign dead. And then came South Carolina. They had something to say about it.
I can still picture standing there at Joe Biden's his big speech, and I got an alert in my inbox saying LA County Public Health is going to be holding a press conference to announce some major news. And at the time, I remember thinking, we have not had any COVID cases in LA County yet. That must be what this is, and it was.
We're here today to share some very sad news. We are reporting our first death here in LA County.
We have directed cities, counties, private, public sector, large and small, all throughout the state of California, to no longer permit
large non-essential events.
Coronavirus is here. The question is, how steep a curve will it be?
I remember being anxious. My friends were all anxious. Everybody I knew, my neighbors, people on the streets, and it felt so otherworldly. We had never been through anything like that.
The next 8 weeks are critical. We can learn, and we will, turn a corner on this virus.
Business is shutting down. You have to stay home. People dying, confusion.
Here's a city, this is LA. Everyone wants to come to the city. Now all of a sudden, not only is this city shut down, but the country is shut down. And we're wondering, how do we adapt? I'm driving a freeway during the pandemic and there's no cars. So you kind of feel like you're somewhere else.
People were working from home, people were learning from home, people were sick of being at home.
Everything shut down. We were in full pandemic mode. People were going to grocery stores, buying up hand sanitizer and toilet paper. And for me, it was really bizarre and interesting because I'm newer to the city and you're trying to learn people and learn the vibe and what matters most to people here in Los Angeles.
I mean, the pandemic was such a big part of everyone's lives. As soon as everything shut down, I think that was what was the all-consuming thing, because people were at home.
I was tired of being in the house, for sure, and ready to get our lives back, you know, the way they were.
Like everybody else, I could not find toilet paper. Try working out in the field and not finding a bathroom. Whereas before you could stop at a Starbucks or a fast food restaurant and just use the bathroom. Good luck with that.
My immediate concern when COVID happened was, one, the disproportionate impact it was going to have on communities of color, and then two, especially people who are incarcerated.
The pandemic and the shutdowns and the uncertainty about that, not knowing how bad that's going to be.
And in the middle of this once-in-a-century pandemic, this video pops up.
What do you want? I can breathe. This man is literally dying under his knee. Mama! Mama!
Put your hands up right now.
All right, what's your name?
George.
George?
George Perry Floyd.
So I started seeing it pop up. So I was like, who is George Floyd and what's going on?
I saw it on social media first because I'm not a fan of watching the repetitive videotapes because it triggers something in my anxiety and trauma, you know, things of that nature. So I seen different people talk about it on social media, so I would scroll by really fast.
I got a call from someone that we worked with in Minnesota who asked me, had I seen the news footage of a man who was killed by a police officer? And I said no. And I told them to text it to me and let me see it.
I know a lot of times people think of journalists as being objective, and we do try to be as objective as we can in situations, but we're also human. My first reaction was, what, is this real? Am I actually watching this man die on video?
And I was just like, wow, is anybody gonna stop him? There are other police officers there. Is anybody going to say, hey, just get up? You know, let's put him in the car, you know. And I'm just like, you actually killed this man on national TV.
I issued a statement relative to the imagery that I saw and just how disgusted I was and troubled I was, and how that action tore at the very fabric of trust between law enforcement and in the communities in which we strive to build trust and serve.
It broke my heart to know what had happened to a human being. And it broke my heart to know, oh my God, here we go again. because I knew what was going to happen. And I did not want to see 92 all over again, but I had a feeling that's exactly where we were headed. We don't learn from our own history.
Unfortunately, it wasn't that much unlike when I first heard Philando Castile's name and Michael Brown's name, Tamir Rice's name. I'll say it, I was just like, oh hell, not again.
When I saw Floyd, I saw Trayvon. He cried for his mother. He cried for his mother, and his mother was dead. And that gave me chills. Even just speaking about it right now, I'm getting chills.
This is brutal. The other cases are seen as brutal as well, but this one just was different because of the agony, the fact that every second was recorded, the fact that people are begging the officer to please get off of George Floyd's neck, and he's not moving. It's really difficult to watch.
You see him tortured and murdered the entire time.
Absolutely disgusted and horrified. I was shocked.
Truthfully, I couldn't watch the whole George Floyd video. I didn't want to hear him cry out for his mother. It's something that I didn't need to see the whole thing. It was so painful.
I was just waiting for a moment of getting off that man's neck. Like, that's the thing that I was waiting for. Like, okay, let this man breathe. He's already like on the ground. He's not fighting anymore. Just let that man up.
And I could not believe that I saw a man die on film. And I remember asking my boyfriend, watching it, and I remember saying, he didn't die, right? He didn't die, he didn't die, he passed out, he didn't die. They took it, the paramedics got him, right? Is there part 2 to this video? And he was like, no, you just saw a man die right now.
I remember the look on the face of Derek Chauvin. And I remember feeling like, you know, he's absolutely summoning the evil of his predecessors, right? I could see slave catchers in his face, right? And I remember thinking, we're watching the slow murder of this man, of this brother. And it took hours for me to process.
And he doesn't at all even hesitate. It doesn't even seem from the expression on his face that he's even considering the pleas of this victim.
I was angry, and being a civil rights attorney all my life, I'm saying, okay, here's another road cop, a bad cop, that got caught on national television. Now the whole world knows. And so the reaction initially was shocking because of the duration, but not surprising because for 30 years I have fought against police misconduct.
And I remember I sent it to a few of my cop contacts, and they all had the exact same reaction. WTF in all caps, OMG in all caps, like disgrace to the profession, are you kidding me? What was he doing? Not a single cop that I talked to said, oh, I understand that. Every single person I talked to was like, no. What happened there is not okay.
When I woke up the morning that I found out about George Floyd, my phone was blowing up because people were saying, have you seen this yet? And I remember specifically laying in my bed watching this video of the officer, Derek Chauvin, you know, with his knee on George Floyd's back, and for over 8 minutes and not moving as George Floyd pleaded for his life and said he couldn't breathe. And I never forget this feeling. It made me feel for a split second in time ashamed to wear the badge and carry the gun that I have on my hip.
And I thought I've seen it all. You know, I thought my grandparents have seen it all. I thought we were past things like this. It's a counterfeit. It was a fake $20 bill that led to a man losing his life at a slow death for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So there's anger, there's sadness, there's frustration, there's confusion because they're here to protect and serve. I have family, I have friends that are police officers. So I want to ask questions to them. How did we get to this point? And that was the first time I heard the name George Floyd. That will forever be embedded in my heart, in my life. Will go down in the history books because it changed so much in 2020. and moving forward.
Please, I can't breathe.
So because we were in a pandemic, because we really couldn't look away, because, you know, here it is staring us in the face, we kind of felt the truth of that, right? And we also have to remember that George Floyd's murder came after 2 other murders, right? It was the third in a line. So we had Ahmaud Arbery, who was murdered while jogging, right? We had Breonna Taylor, and then we had George Floyd.
But something shifted with George Floyd. Something shifted because we were essentially in solitary confinement when he was killed. We were forced to look at what happened. We were forced to reconcile. We were all there. It's not like you were too busy or you were off on a ski trip in Aspen or you were, you know, at summer school or whatever. Everybody was aware of what had gone on, the world over.
So as we came into the week, we didn't know exactly if it would quote unquote go viral, what it would prompt as far as protests, outrage. We knew that it certainly was imagery that further traumatized communities that were that felt that the American policing was unjust and it was racially profiled, that it was the odds were against them because of the color of their skin or the community in which they lived in.
Abolition of police is necessary.
We quickly pulled together a Los Angeles-based protest in honor of George Floyd, who was murdered by police in Minneapolis.
And on Wednesday, about the 6 o'clock hour, 6:30 though, the nature of that crowd changed. It grew and it grew to be more boisterous, and it also began moving.
And so people marched. We wound up marching kind of around downtown. There was a freeway shut down.
We had Skyfox over it, and we saw all the protesters swarming onto the freeway, and a couple of CHP cruisers came by to try to disperse the crowd. The crowd swarmed the CHP cruisers, threw a skateboard in the back of the window, busted it out. Somebody jumped onto the hood of the CHP car, and they both tried to drive away from the crowd. And the guy fell off the hood, hit his head, and looked like he got knocked out.
And that protester went down, and there was immediate crowd reaction as to, again, whether that was going to further prompt or fuel the emotions of the crowd. Our work that day was to get people who were on the freeway off the freeway. They continued protesting into that evening, but there wasn't any acts of violence that I can recall at this moment. If there were, they were isolated and very limited, and there was no property damage.
There were some incidents of police brutality and abuse. There was just a lot of energy.
On this Friday, our week ends in a night of unrest as you're looking live here, downtown Los Angeles, where there have been clashes with police. LAPD, they're on the ground there in downtown LA. They sent out a tweet to stay out of downtown LA.
Friday night, we went off the air at 10 o'clock, but we saw things were heating up. Then we came back on the air at 11 o'clock, and essentially for the next week straight, we didn't stop broadcasting.
So I gave my commander's intent, and so let's give the opportunity to facilitate First Amendment demonstrations. If they are in the streets, we'll provide for the safety of them as best possible, try to reach out and engage with them, with individuals within the group, but also let's have now increased attention on safeguarding property, of safeguarding our officers, our personnel, of making sure that we have enough resources, that we have supplies such as fire extinguishers and so forth.
There were some things being lit on fire in the middle of the street, just like trash, garbage cans, that sort of a thing. But there were a few businesses that did start to get looted. And I remember the sheriff's department then brought in their resources to help LAPD. They brought their buses for people to be arrested in. And that was kind of the first moment when things started seeming more unstable.
We recognized that we would be looking in the coming days, would be a defining moment for us in 10 or 15 years from now. Because we had a sense that this was not going to stop. unfortunately, that night we saw significantly larger crowds that became more engaged in acts of violence and vandalism. Attacks on officers. We declared an unlawful assembly. They refused to leave. We essentially told them in front of City Hall, if you're not going to leave, you're under arrest, sit down. And they did, about 200 people. But unfortunately, other factions of those demonstrations broke off and began going south into the city, into the downtown business core. I saw countless times officers be struck and injured by aggressive and violent assaults by protesters and demonstrators. Intermixed within that were individuals that were angry or mad, were frustrated, but weren't involved themselves in violence.
I haven't ever broken a Starbucks window, right? But when we shut down a freeway, which I have done, right? When we take over a mall, which I have done, right? When we claim space, which I have done, when we refuse to leave, when we're assembled in front of the mayor's house or outside of LAPD headquarters or outside of City Hall, when we take that space, it really is a claiming of the only semblance of power we feel like we can get in that moment. And so it's rebellion. It's rebelling against a system.
I remember LAPD was bringing units in from everywhere, sirens all over the place, helicopter above, this is an unlawful assembly, loudspeaker, sheriff buses coming in, and that's kind of when we realized this is probably going to bloom into something bigger here in the coming days.
More shots being fired, more being fired.
No, they're fine.
They're good.
Oh gosh. Oh
Gosh.
no.
We need everybody to summon their better angels in this city of angels.